Hey people, welcome to the first episode of JJ Today podcast. This podcast is dedicated for English language learners in Indonesia. And for this episode, I'm going to share about my personal English learning journey from an English course student to an English course teacher, and now as a finance professional in one of the world's biggest global bank, working and using English every day with people from all over the world for the past 15 years. Before going into it, I want to first of all share about what JJ Today channel is about and the format of this podcast series. JJ Today is the first language learning channel using artificial intelligence or AI in Indonesia. We use AI to create this audio visualizer and to help edit the overall video. Here's the link to the video where I talked about the AI we use to create high-quality language learning content that focuses more on real-life language application and less on theories. Next about this podcast. So me and my team initially wanted to run a normal podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and all. But then we started to debate about whether we should speak English in podcast or speak Indonesian, or maybe mix both languages. I personally think it was an extremely important problem because this is a language learning podcast and many people have different level of English understanding. For example, if I speak mostly in Indonesian, the basic level listeners would greatly benefit, but the intermediate and higher level learners will suffer because the intermediate and advanced level learners will get bored and they really, really need the exposure. I remember the frustration of not being able to find real English experience when I was an advanced level learner. It's not good. Exposure to real, naturally spoken English is very, very important. It's ultra important, in fact. It's the secret if you want your English to reach that super smooth fluency everyone dreams about. So long story short, we found a brilliant idea to transform the podcast into a visualizer video where we could give an Indonesian text moving together with the audio. This way, basic level listeners can learn from following the Indonesian text, while intermediate and advanced learners can try to listen without looking at the Indonesian text, allowing them the much-needed natural spoken English practice. And if they miss to understand something, they have the Indonesian text to come back to. So I think this podcast series will be great for everyone, for all English learners of all levels. There's no basic, intermediate, or advanced levels here. Everyone have a way to follow and learn something. I will speak as natural as possible in this podcast series. Not too fast, and I'll keep my words simple, but it'll be natural. Because I think being natural is also an important secret to mastering the English language. Natural means it's like real-life English conversation in the real world, like in the office or on the street. I try to speak just like I speak English at work with my expat colleagues and other coworkers. Real-life English talks are called uncontrolled. This is different with most classroom English. Classroom English speaking oftentimes are unnatural because the way English is spoken in classrooms are often in a very controlled manner. The choice of words, the sentence structure are controlled on purpose to achieve the lesson's goals. Don't get me wrong here. I think this is good and necessary. My point is, there needs to be more than just classroom English. If you really want to achieve fluency, there are missing things, and one of the biggest missing thing is exposure to natural spoken English. The really good English teachers know this, and they are skillful at setting their classroom very close to natural English speaking environment. I was lucky to have a few good teachers like this when I was an English course student long time ago. Okay, I think that was really clear. And speaking of classrooms, let's get into the real topic for this first podcast. I'll share quickly about my journey as an English language learner, becoming an English teacher, and now a regular user of English in the finance world. So first of all, I am 100% Indonesian. I was born in Jakarta, and I still live in Jakarta. I went to a local school in Jakarta and never studied in any foreign country outside of Indonesia. I always have a huge interest on languages. In the past, until today, and most likely forever. My mother speaks French language, and that's probably my first attraction to languages. You know French language, right? It sounds so beautiful, but very difficult to master. But that's all it takes sometimes, to see or hear someone speak a foreign language so beautifully, or maybe seeing someone successful speaking a foreign language. And that inspiration sticks forever and changes your whole life. So I joined an English course when I was in junior high school, I think. I remember the level. I tested and was told to start in basic 4 level, just below intermediate. I've had many different teachers, mostly local Indonesian teachers in the early stages. I love them, and they're all very nice and wonderful, friendly people. But to be very honest here, I didn't find that magic with them. I felt a little bit bored sometimes with the lessons because they are very predictable. But I kept going. I attended the classes diligently. I think it's mostly because of my love for languages. Somehow I was never in love with the grammar and theories. Whoa, I'm not saying you guys should stop learning grammar now here, okay? I'm just saying grammar and theories are, boring. Let's be completely honest. But if you're serious about becoming fluent in English, I think it's unavoidable you'll meet some, or a lot, of boring moments. Okay, here's the question. Was all that boring grammar lessons important at all? I think yes. Even today, I can still feel deep down in my English there is that bedrock grammar foundation that was built during my early years. So, yes, grammar lessons are important to build your foundation, but never for a second think that you can become fluent through grammar. Right? I think that was a very important takeaway. I hope you got that clearly. So, I pushed through and finally became an advanced English learner student. This is the moment where my parents decided to send me to a native speaker English course. It was still in Jakarta, not somewhere outside. The teachers were mostly British. I could say, having a native speaker English teacher is awesome. It was a huge uplift in my English capability. Like I said before, natural, spoken English is very important and will make a huge difference. Above everything else, the expat teachers showed me a glimpse of how real Western people speak in real world. It was very colorful, if I can illustrate it that way. It also pumped up my confidence level in speaking it out. I remember I was initially a bit shy and quiet in the class, but then I forced myself to ask questions and to chat with the teachers. Lesson here maybe. If you find a really good teacher, go after them. Go chase them down and talk about anything with them. Absorb their brain. It's really, really important and valuable to interact with people who can speak English naturally fluent. Also, don't be shy in the classrooms, especially the classroom with a good teacher. Fire away at the teacher. I finally achieved the highest level and got an international certification for my English language. It was nice, and I imagined myself becoming a language teacher for life. That's how much my love for language is. I went to become a fully legit English teacher in one of the well-known English courses in Jakarta at that time. I also taught private English lessons to mostly children before that. I think at this time when I was teaching, my English fluency was at a stage where it was trying to find its self-identity. Yep, self-identity. I think every high-level English learner will find the moment where they're trying to find themselves, if you know what I mean. Like kids, trying to find what they want to become when they grow up. Your English speaking skill will also try to find its final shape. Now this part is where it gets tricky but exciting at the same time. This is where the grammar lessons start to lose their gravity and art starts to take over. Language is ultimately an art. You got to remember that. It's not science, it's art. When you fly high enough in language learning, you'll start to enter this art phase. This is the part where you don't need more grammar and theories. In fact, this is the part where you can loosen up a bit with grammar and theories and learn to find and embrace some of the art side. How to do this? People hear me out here? There's no other way to do this than going out there and find the best English-speaking people that you could find. There's no other way. This is where grammar and theories have built you into a solid space rocket, and it's time to fly. You have to find the right people to talk English with. For me, work was the solution. I finally decided to move into the finance world, and I was lucky enough to land a job at a global banking firm where I work with a lot of expats and people from around the world. Deep down, my fire for language learning was burning even more, even though I wasn't teaching anymore. That's because I finally got the chance to practice my English in a very real setting, as real as it gets. I leave this curious question. How did all that English courses, international certification, and teacher experience do when I was faced with the real battle of real-world English speaking? I will tell you the answer to that in the next podcast episode. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you like it, do please consider to subscribe. See you in the next one.